Hello there. Most people are looking at this from the wrong viewpoint. Once again, the Telegraph has published what seems to be a negative story about electric vehicles, or to be more accurate, battery-powered vehicles. And this one is about EVs being more likely to damage roads because they are heavier than traditional cars, leading to even more potholes than we already have. And in the comments under the article, it's seen by the overwhelming majority of both pro and anti-EV contributors as an anti-EV stance. But being a cynic, I'm not so sure about that. I think it's all about the tax situation. We all know that the drivers of internal combustion engine cars, ICE cars as they are known, those drivers end up pouring huge amounts of their dosh into the coffers of the exchequer. And to get people to go battery-driven, people who bought them got lots of tax breaks and cheap charging. But once the tipping point comes and most cars are EV, then the Treasury will have to bridge the gap with more taxes, to the point that drivers of EVs pay the same as ICE car drivers pay today, if not more. I see these negative stories as a way of floating the "we must tax EVs" concept and make it an acceptable policy. And people are already talking about taxing vehicles by the mile just for using the roads, especially where the traffic is congested, as well as using variable pricing to account for when people find a new rat run. But now there's also talk of taxing vehicles by their weight to account for the road damage they could potentially cause. I mean, someone's got to pay for all those road repairs and upgrades that never happen, don't they? Now, according to the Telegraph report, there is a standard fourth power formula that highway engineers use to assess the potential of a vehicle to cause road damage. And that means if the weight of a vehicle is doubled, it causes 16 times more damage. So in the future, those battery-powered lorries and vans will be making mincemeat out of our tarmac, unless the roads are upgraded to deal with it. And as these EV plans progress and ICE vehicles are banned from the roads, it will become apparent that for most people, personal transport ownership is totally unaffordable. So there will be more of the heavier vehicles on the road for business and home deliveries as well as public transport, but much more space for them, and I think that is the aim. The establishment used as many positives about EVs to get people used to the idea that we are going EV whatever the cost, because it will all be so marvellous. But we're now reaching the point of tax reality. So all the negatives will start to be floated to get us used to paying for what was meant to be our ridiculously cheap saviour. And all talk of taxes and tariffs will ramp up when the government starts talking about the use of child labour to dig the elements we need to build EVs out of the ground. Oh, and that big lithium mining project in Cornwall is now on very dodgy financial ground, as it's being reported that unless they can get another 10 million quid in the next month or so, they'll be going under. And this was going to be one of the main players in our big UK battery enterprise. And just last month, the BBC was calling this project a white gold rush that excites Cornwall. So why aren't all the green investors wading in with their billions? I thought that was what green investing was all about. Why not tap Trevor Neilson or the Climate Emergency Fund he set up to bankroll disruptive protests? Surely that money would be better spent on a lithium mine to go all electric. Or is there something in all of this that no longer makes economic sense, or any sense at all? And all those battery-powered scooters and bikes will probably have to start being both insured and taxed as well to make up for any shortfall. All very easy to monitor with all the cameras and surveillance devices being installed everywhere. Every battery-powered vehicle will end up being chipped for charges, and to monitor where they're going as well. Just for road stats, you understand. Now, amongst the comments under that particular article is a link to a website called temperature.global. And in its About section it says, "This site was created by professional meteorologists and climatologists with over 25 years' experience in surface weather observations." And using data from temperature sources from around the world to determine the global temperature, an updated global temperature and deviation from a datum is produced. And this is displayed on a deviation graph from 2015 onwards. That's just over 8 years of data. And the deviation graph shows how far above or below the 30-year mean the Earth's temperature was in those years. And the data gets updated every minute. And they've also put together a table of the average annual deviation since 2015, with below normal against every entry. What does that suggest to you? Nothing on that site suggested to me that what the EcoLoons is saying is correct. In fact, most of the last 8 years appears to have been cooler compared to the 30-year mean. Is the eco-lobby in a hurry to get to a certain political, not environmental, but to get a political aim in place before we cotton on? Now, any net zero zealous government, whether Tory, Labour or whatever, is going to have to raise taxes somewhere, because one of the big green schemes is going to come up short for the Treasury. Because the much called for and vaunted North Sea windfall tax is now looking like it won't raise anywhere near what was claimed. The idea was to claw in over 40 billion quid by 2028. Now that suggests to me that the Treasury thought oil and gas prices would remain elevated until at least then. But the price has dropped dramatically, meaning the tax take will be much lower than expected. And the FT says that the tax take could end up as low as £16 billion, not over £40 billion. And that could be exacerbated by UK businesses pulling out of the North Sea or selling up to foreign buyers. But the tax is doing its job, that of shutting down any semblance of UK energy security, as we're forced to buy in coal, gas and oil from abroad at great cost. And when Labour returns to power, they have pledged to tax North Sea operations even more heavily by backdating that tax and ditching investment tax allowances. That will really put the lid on the North Sea, which you have to realise is the aim. The establishment wants all North Sea operations shut down as quickly as possible. That must be obvious to all by now. And tax will be the weapon of choice. And the next target will be gas, diesel and petrol once the timing is right. New levies will be placed on them at the levels imposed on tobacco and alcohol to force more and more people off the roads, and in the process shut down petrol and diesel forecourts, making it all but impossible to operate a traditional internal combustion engined car.